Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making the most delicious oatmeal raisin cookies you've ever had. And this is an oatmeal raisin cookie that I have been using for years, and these make a really thick, really soft, kind of chewy oatmeal raisin cookie. And if you don't like raisins, you can substitute cranberries, dates, pretty much any dried fruit in this. Even blueberries would be absolutely delicious in this. So if you're not a big raisin fan, use some other dried fruit in it. But what we need is a stick of butter, which is a half a cup, my secret ingredient, which is a half a cup of applesauce. And this is going to make them extra moist, and it's going to add a little bit of sweetness to them. I use these little cups because the kids are not home no more, and that's about all I ever eat when I open them. We need 2 eggs, about 3.5 cups of oatmeal, 2.5 cups of raisins or other dried fruit, 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 3/4 of a cup of regular white sugar, and 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Now, I have a light brown sugar here. You can use dark brown if you have it. I use what I have. The dark brown will make your cookies a little bit chewier. So if you want them a little chewier, try to find dark brown sugar, but light brown works. While I continue to go over ingredients, start creaming together my applesauce, my butter, and my sugar. Now, I only have a couple more things here. I have a tablespoon of cinnamon. That's going to give them a lot of flavor. 2 teaspoons of baking soda, going to help them rise a little bit. And I have a teaspoon of salt. I have made these without the salt before, but with all this oatmeal, the salt really boosts the flavor. And I'm going to go ahead and add this into my flour. And I have 2 teaspoons of vanilla. You can use a little more if you want. You could even leave it out, but I think vanilla makes everything better. Now, after you've let the butter and the sugar and stuff mix for a while, do give your bowl a scrape, because sometimes the butter all gets stuck down in the bottom of the bowl, and that's not good. If you are hand mixing these or using just a regular hand mixer, I do recommend creaming your butter and your sugar and stuff together first before you add anything else in. I don't use my stand mixer a lot, but I do use it for making cookies for sure. All right, that's good enough. You can keep going until you see absolutely no sign of your butter in there. You know, that's all perfectly smooth. And sometimes I do that, and sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I don't do it. But that's definitely creamed enough that our cookies are going to be good. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw my vanilla in there, and I actually could have done that to start with, but I sure don't want to forget my vanilla. And I'm going to add my eggs in and let them mix in that just a little bit. I'm not going to overbeat them, but I do want to mix them in with my wet ingredients. All right, now next I'm going to add my flour mixture, and I'm going to combine this just a tiny bit before I put it in there, because sometimes cinnamon will tend to lump up in recipes like this. And if you kind of stir it in the flour, it doesn't do that. And I'm adding it all at once, and I'm just going to start my mixer on low, because I do have quite a few wet ingredients, and it'll mix in there now. But start it on low. While that's mixing up, I'm going to take just a little bit of my oatmeal, just a fistful, and I'm going to kind of mix that in with my raisins with my hand. And I'm doing that so that when I add my raisins in, they don't all clump together in my cookie dough. I'm using quick oats today, and you can certainly use the old-fashioned oats. Again, I'm just using what I have. The quick oats do change the texture just a little bit. You know, if you use quick oats or old-fashioned oats, obviously, because the oat itself is bigger, or the cut of the oat is bigger. So you might want to kind of play with that in this recipe and see which texture you prefer. Okay, give your bowl a little scrape, and you can see that flour mix in there pretty easy. And if you're hand mixing these, or if you're using a hand electric mixer, I usually fold my flour in. I don't use the hand mixer for that because it tends to make a mess in the kitchen when you do. A stand mixer won't kind of blow it around everywhere, but it seems like my hand electric mixer, it blows it all over every time I do that. Now I'm going to add in the oatmeal, and you can certainly fold this in, but since I've got my stand mixer out here, I'm going to let it mix it just a little bit. Since I got to clean it, I might as well use it, huh? Now, I am not going to mix my raisins in with this because I don't want to mash them up. Dates are excellent in these cookies, and so are the cranberries. I have not tried them with the dry blueberries, but I really want to, and I've made this recipe forever, ever since my kids were real little. It's a family favorite. So it's a good recipe, and I don't know why I haven't tried it with the blueberries yet. But if you try it with the blueberries, let me know how you liked it. And that's dry blueberries, not fresh ones. You want to get the dry ones. Any dried fruit. Okay, now we're just going to add in our raisins and mix those up. I don't know if you can see it or not as I'm mixing these, but because I tossed that little bit of oatmeal in the raisins, I don't have huge clumps of raisins sticking together. They are mixing in here real even. And you do want to wait until the very end to add your fruit because you don't want it to get, why is it all mushed up? All right, that's pretty good. I've got down in the bowl good. And these are ready to scoop out. Here are some of my best cookie baking tips. Use parchment paper. It makes cleanup much easier. I mean, you don't even have to wash your cookie sheet if you use parchment paper. And especially during holiday baking, you can, bake batch after batch after batch of cookies, and your cookie sheet doesn't get burned, and you don't have to take time to stop and wash it and clean it up. Now, my next tip is use a cookie scooper. It makes them even. It makes them much faster than scooping them out with a spoon. And I'm making some big cookies because these cookies are going to stay, they're going to bake up real thick, and they're not going to spread out a whole lot, which makes them, that's how I like them. If you like a thinner, crisper oatmeal raisin cookie, space them out a little more and take a fork and mash them out like you do your peanut butter cookies. But I like the cookie scoop for making any kind of drop cookie because it keeps the size consistent. And if the size is consistent, they all bake at the same rate. So you don't have some that are done and burned and some that are not done. Also, I'm not going to immediately put these in the oven. I always let my cookie dough rest for an hour at least in the refrigerator before I bake it. And that makes them rise up, and they are just much better cookies. That resting time, it just greatly improves the quality of the cookie. Now, around the holidays, when you know you are going to have folks dropping by, and this is a tip that I learned from my Aunt Paula years ago. Mix up several batches of different kind of cookies. And you can store this cookie dough in your refrigerator for 2-3 weeks, even longer. And keep cookie dough, homemade cookie dough, in your refrigerator around the holidays. And then you can take it out of the refrigerator, scoop it out, or you can scoop it before you put it in the refrigerator. Put wax paper between layers of scooped out cookie dough, put it in a Ziploc bag. Freezer bags work best because they're thicker and the air in the refrigerator doesn't get to it. But store it in a Ziploc freezer bag in your refrigerator, either in a chunk or scooped out with wax paper or something in between it. And you can have fresh homemade cookies on the table or on a plate to serve to guests around the holidays in 15 minutes or less. And I don't bake a whole bunch of these in advance because they will keep in the refrigerator. I bake them as I eat them. So they're always fresh, they're always hot, and all cookies are better fresh and hot. All of them are. So there's some tips, especially around the holidays when you want the fresh baked stuff for folks stopping by. Keep the cookie dough in the refrigerator and have oatmeal raisin, chocolate chip, peanut butter, whatever your favorite kind of cookies are that you can just pull out and bake as people come in. Certainly some sugar cookies around Christmas. But we're going to preheat the oven once these have rested for an hour to 350 degrees. And depending on your oven, these are going to cook anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes. These are pretty big. I'm thinking probably 15 minutes. They will be golden brown, and they won't sink if you touch them. So let's see what they look like when they're done. Golden brown. And they don't sink when you touch them. I mean, you'll know, they'll bounce a little bit, so don't stick your finger all the way through them. Now, these are best hot. These are really good, not just for snacking, but for breakfast, because you got all that oatmeal in there. I use these kind of like a meal replacement a lot of times, or a grab and run breakfast. If I've got to go somewhere, I'll grab a couple of these for breakfast and eat them on my way. I like to take them when I'm traveling. Of course, they're not fresh and hot if you're traveling. Now, give them just a minute. I said fresh and hot, but give them at least a minute because those raisins are going to be blistering hot. But if you're serving them to adults, warn them they're hot. If you're serving them to kids, give them 2 or 3 minutes at least. You want to let those raisins cool down because kids, tend to eat a cookie fast. So give them time so that the raisins won't burn them. I have actually seen people get blistered from raisins in cookies, and I know this is a silly warning, but trust me, you don't want to eat a raisin right out of the oven. Keep this recipe through the fall, winter baking season, and like I said, it's a good meal replacement. And try adding other stuff to it, different fruit. Add a cup of nuts to it, a cup of pecans or chopped walnuts or chopped almonds, just anything like that would be really good in these. It's my favorite. You can see these are a perfect moist little cookie that are just loaded with the raisins. And like I said, if you don't like the raisins, there's lots of other options. They are great on a cold winter morning. So make up a batch of the dough, keep it in the fridge, and when you want something warm for breakfast and you don't have time to make breakfast, try these for breakfast. And they're really good on those cold winter evenings when you're wanting something warm to snack on. Before we go, I want to leave you with Hebrews 7:19. For the law made nothing perfect, but the bringing in of a better hope did, by which we draw nigh unto God. Hebrews chapter 7 talks about the priesthood and the imperfect men who held that position, and how they had to make sacrifices for themselves and for the people before they could even go to God. But Jesus Christ changed all of that. He is the better hope. And through him, we can all draw closer to God. And we don't need the imperfect people to make sacrifices for us or to intercede for us. Jesus is there, and we can all go directly to him. I know there are a lot of people out there who have fallen away, who they don't even trust God anymore because of what imperfect people in a church have done. But we're not living in that system where we have to depend on those imperfect people. So put your faith in Jesus Christ and seek him. And I hope that you find a church that you can be a part of where you have someone standing up and leading that church that's an example of Christ. But if you don't, you be that example. Be that example for someone who is looking for Christ, who is trying to draw closer to God. I want to thank you all so much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Share all of our videos with your friends, and until next time, remember to put God first.